Have you ever tried to move on, but someone keeps living in your mind like they never left? It's quiet, almost invisible, but it pulls at you late at night, in the middle of your day, in moments you can't control. And here's the unsettling truth: it's not random. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe and like this video, because what you're about to understand might change how you see every connection you've ever had. I'm going to speak to you not as a stranger, but as someone who understands the patterns your mind is hiding from you. When someone is constantly in your thoughts, despite no communication, your brain is trying to finish a story that was never allowed to end properly. It's not always love. It's not always destiny. Sometimes it's psychological tension, unfinished emotional business that keeps replaying because your mind craves closure. You see, men often think that thinking about someone means they matter deeply. And yes, sometimes they do, but more often it means something was left unresolved. A conversation that never happened, a truth that was never expressed, a connection that was interrupted before it could reach clarity. Your mind doesn't like gaps. It doesn't like uncertainty, so it fills in the silence with imagination. It replays memories, exaggerates emotions, and slowly builds a version of that person that may not even exist anymore. And the more you feed it, the more real it feels. This is why you can't just stop thinking about them. Because you're not just thinking about a person, you're thinking about a version of yourself that existed with them. A version that felt something intense, something rare, something you don't easily replace. And here's where it becomes dangerous. Because if you don't understand this, you start believing that constant thoughts equal a deeper connection. You start convincing yourself that it must mean something bigger, something meant to be. But sometimes, it simply means your mind is holding on to a moment that never got the ending it needed. And until you face that truth, that person will keep living in your head, rent-free. You need to understand something most men are never taught. Your mind is not loyal to truth, it's loyal to emotional intensity. That's why the person you can't stop thinking about is rarely the one who treated you with calm consistency. It's the one who made you feel something unpredictable, something incomplete, something that kept you slightly off balance. When there's no communication, your brain doesn't relax, it searches. It tries to decode silence as if it's a message. Why did they pull away? What changed? Did it mean anything to them? And without answers, your imagination becomes louder than reality ever was. This is how attachment deepens in absence, not presence. Because when someone is gone, they can't contradict the version of them you're creating. They can't disappoint you. They can't break the illusion. So your mind slowly edits the past, polishing their image, highlighting the moments that felt meaningful, and quietly erasing the parts that didn't. And you don't even realize it's happening. What you're feeling isn't always about them anymore. It's about the emotional experience they triggered inside you. The excitement, the curiosity, the tension, the almost. That almost is powerful. It lingers longer than certainty ever does. Men often mistake this loop for a sign that the connection was special, rare, or irreplaceable. But psychologically, it's often the opposite. The less complete something is, the more space it occupies in your mind. It's like a question that was never answered. Your brain keeps reopening it, trying to solve it, trying to make sense of it, trying to give it an ending that feels satisfying. And here's the part you might not want to hear. If that person was truly present, consistent, and clear with you, your mind would be quieter. You wouldn't be stuck in this loop, because clarity creates peace, but ambiguity creates obsession. So when someone is always in your thoughts without any communication, it doesn't automatically mean they're thinking about you too. It means your mind is trying to resolve something that feels unfinished. And until you recognize that, you'll keep confusing emotional noise with emotional truth. What you're experiencing has a name in psychology, even if most people never hear it explained this way. It's called intrusive attachment loops. And it happens when emotional intensity was high, but emotional resolution never arrived. Your brain doesn't distinguish between healthy connection and unresolved emotional tension in the moment it's happening. It only records intensity. So if someone made you feel seen one day, confused the next, and distant after that, your mind flags them as important. Not because they were necessarily right for you, but because they were unpredictable. And unpredictability is addictive to the human brain. It activates the same internal system that keeps you checking your phone even when you know nothing new is coming. It creates anticipation, and anticipation is powerful. It keeps you mentally engaged long after the actual interaction has ended. So when you're sitting there wondering why they're still in your thoughts, understand this. Your mind is not replaying love, it's replaying uncertainty. Now here's where men often misinterpret their own experience. They assume, if I can't stop thinking about her, she must be special. But what they're really experiencing is cognitive unfinished business. The brain hates incomplete patterns. It keeps circling back, trying to find missing pieces. And the more you try to force yourself to forget, the more your mind resists. Because suppression doesn't erase memory, it intensifies it. That's why at random moments when you're not even trying, their face appears. A memory surfaces, a feeling returns. Not because the connection is growing, but because your brain is attempting resolution in the only way it knows how. Repetition. There's also something deeper happening here that most people overlook. You are not only attached to them, you are attached to how you felt about yourself when they were around. The version of you that felt chosen, desired, excited, or emotionally alive. So when they disappear, it doesn't just feel like losing them. It feels like losing access to that version of yourself. And that's why moving on feels harder than it should. Because you're not only letting go of a person, you're letting go of an emotional state your brain associates with them. But here is the truth you need to sit with. If someone only lives strongly in your mind in their absence, it means the connection was never stable enough to exist peacefully in reality. And anything that cannot exist peacefully in reality will always survive loudly in imagination. Now I want you to notice something carefully, because this is where most men misread their own psychology. When someone is constantly on your mind, your brain starts building meaning around it. It tries to justify the intensity. It says, this must be love, or this must be fate, because it's uncomfortable to accept a simpler explanation, that your nervous system is activated, not your heart being destined. There is a difference. Love, in its healthy form, feels grounding. It brings clarity even if it's painful. But what you're describing feels mentally repetitive, emotionally charged, and slightly restless. That's not peace, that's activation. Your mind keeps returning to them not because you are meant to act, but because your system is still processing emotional residue. Think of it like an echo in an empty room. The sound isn't new, it's just bouncing around because there's nothing to absorb it yet. And silence from the other person makes this worse. Because silence is not neutral to the human brain. Silence is interpreted as uncertainty. And uncertainty forces the mind into overwork. It starts writing theories, imagining scenarios, replaying conversations, searching for hidden meanings in things that may have had no deeper intention. This is how emotional fixation grows without any new input from the real world. And the dangerous part is that your imagination becomes more emotionally satisfying than reality. In your mind, you can replay the best moments without rejection, without confusion, without disappointment. You control the narrative. So slowly, your brain prefers the imagined version over closure. But here is something important I want you to understand deeply. Just because someone occupies your thoughts does not mean they occupy your future. The mind does not measure relevance, it measures emotional impact. That means a person who triggered confusion, hope, excitement, and withdrawal can stay mentally louder than someone who is simply stable, kind, and consistent. And if you don't learn to separate emotional intensity from emotional compatibility, you will keep mistaking mental noise for emotional truth. What you are feeling is not proof that you should go back, chase, or reconnect. It is proof that your mind has not yet completed the processing of what happened, and until it does, it will keep bringing them back, not as a sign, but as a loop. There is another layer to this that many men overlook completely, and it's the part that quietly controls your emotional world. When someone is absent, your mind doesn't just remember them, it selectively reconstructs them. It highlights the moments where you felt emotionally elevated and softens the moments where you felt uncertain, disrespected, or confused. This is called emotional editing, and it happens automatically. So over time, the the person in your mind is no longer the real person. It becomes a curated version, shaped by your longing, your imagination, and your need for meaning. That's why distance can feel strangely more intense than actual presence. Because presence contains reality, and reality contains friction, misunderstanding, and limits. But distance removes all of that. It replaces truth with interpretation. Now here's where your psychology gets even more interesting. Your brain associates emotional spikes with importance. So if this person once triggered strong feelings, hope, attraction, anxiety, excitement, your nervous system labels them as significant. But significance is not the same as suitability, and that distinction is where most emotional confusion begins. You can feel deeply pulled towards someone and still not be aligned with them in reality. But your mind doesn't naturally separate those two things in the moment. It just says, this feels strong, so it must mean something. And when there is no communication, no closure, no clear ending, your mind keeps the file open. It keeps checking it in the background, quietly, repeatedly, like an unfinished task it cannot close. This is why even random triggers, songs, places, time of night, certain moods, can suddenly bring them back into your awareness. Not because they are returning, but because your brain has stored them in a high emotion category, and emotional memory is persistent. But here is the truth that brings clarity if you can accept it. Real connection does not require constant mental replay to stay alive. Real connection feels stable, even when someone is not physically present. If someone only survives in your mind when they are absent, then what you are holding onto is not a relationship. It is a mental reconstruction built from unresolved emotion. And the mind will always keep reconstructing until you give it something more powerful than imagination. Closure, acceptance, or truth. Now I want to challenge something you may not have questioned yet. The idea that thinking about someone means you should do something about it. That assumption is where many men lose control of their emotional clarity. Thoughts are not instructions. They are not messages from destiny. They are mental events, some meaningful, some random, and some simply the residue of emotional experiences that were never fully processed. When someone is constantly in your thoughts without communication, your brain is not asking you to act, it is asking you to understand. But most people skip understanding and jump straight to meaning. They say, if I can't stop thinking about her, I should reach out. Or, this must mean she is also thinking about me. But that is not psychology, that is emotional projection. Your mind is always trying to reduce discomfort, and uncertainty is one of the most uncomfortable states for the human nervous system. So it fills the gap with stories. It creates reasons. It builds patterns where none may exist. And this is especially powerful when emotional investment was once high. Because the stronger the emotional peak, the longer the mental echo. But here is something very important. Echoes fade when the original source stops being reinforced. If there is no communication, no new interaction, no real-world input, the mind eventually has only memory and imagination to work with. And imagination will always exaggerate what memory leaves incomplete. This is why time alone does not always heal emotional fixation. Time without understanding just repeats the same loop at a slower pace. You are not stuck because the person is powerful. You are stuck because your mind has not accepted the absence of resolution. And until that acceptance happens, your brain will continue to treat the situation as unfinished business. Now listen carefully to this distinction. Missing someone is normal, but being mentally pulled towards someone who is not actively present in your life is often a sign of internal processing, not external connection. It is your system trying to restore balance, and the moment you stop interpreting every thought as a sign, you begin to regain control over your emotional direction. Because then you are no longer reacting to thoughts, you are observing them. And that is where clarity begins to return. So now we arrive at the most important question you have been quietly asking yourself this entire time. What does it actually mean when someone is always in your mind, but there is no communication? And I want you to hear this without emotion distorting it. It does not automatically mean they are your person. It does not automatically mean there is unfinished love waiting to be completed. And it does not automatically mean you should act on it. What it does often mean is this. Your nervous system formed a strong emotional imprint, and that imprint has not yet been resolved into clarity. Think of emotional imprints like fingerprints left on your attention. Some people pass through your life and leave nothing. Others pass through and leave activation, questions, tension, curiosity, longing. The stronger the activation, the longer your mind keeps referencing them, even in silence. But silence is not connection. Silence is absence of new information. And without new information, your mind reuses old data. It replays memories, it fills gaps, it builds emotional narratives to keep the experience psychologically alive, even when reality has already moved on. This is why you can feel so strongly about someone who is no longer even present in your life. Not because the bond is actively growing, but because the brain is still processing what it couldn't fully understand. And here is the grounding truth many people resist. If a connection is real, it does not require mental obsession to prove itself. Real connection shows itself in consistency, communication, and mutual presence in reality, not just in your thoughts. So when you notice someone living in your mind without communication, don't immediately assume it is fate. Instead, recognize it as data. Your mind is showing you where emotional residue still exists, where closure is missing, where interpretation replaced understanding. And the healthiest response is not chasing, not overthinking, and not romanticizing the loop, but becoming aware of it, because awareness breaks repetition. And once you stop feeding meaning into every thought, something shifts. The intensity starts to loosen, the mental replay begins to slow, not because you forced it, but because you finally understood it. And that is where freedom begins quietly.